On this episode, I talk with Flook.eth from Knights of the Ether. Knights of the Ether, or KOTE, is coming off of Mydsummer Madness, a very successful launch event for their deck builder game, Blightfell. And I'm starting to see Flook as kind of the renaissance man of the Treasure DAO ecosystem. I say that because he's got a very diverse background and he brought all those skills to bear in co-founding this project with his brother, Dubber. Flook takes us through the journey that began as a generative NFT collection on Mainnet to a DeFi staking game on Arbitrum, thanks in no small part to the smalls, to the launch of Blightfell in this Mydsummer Madness event. This includes important lessons for founders about hiring within your community, which has been a very common thread around here lately, plus testing your ideas within that community without giving away too much, and things like staying focused as a builder while crypto Twitter chases and glorifies obvious scams and pump and dumps over and over and over and over. It's a great founder story with all that and a whole bunch more. Here we go.
Welcome to Ready Layer 2 with me, Smol. This is a podcast for the founders, innovators, and experimenters building the future of Web3 on Arbitrum.
Hey everybody, Smol here for the Ready Layer 2 podcast. I'm super excited to bring you today's guest, founder of a game that I've been playing and enjoying all summer. Recently brought us the Mydsummer Madness. Flook, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Git. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You guys are doing awesome work right now. And I'm in your Discord and I play in the game, like I said, and I'm seeing a lot of the excitement that you all have generated. So first, congrats on an awesome launch. It's got to be pretty rewarding. And I want to dig into all of this stuff. And to set the audience up, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got interested in Web3 gaming in the first place?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, Mydsummer Madness has been really awesome. We're really happy with all the kind of success we've had and the new community members that we've had join. So my name's Flook, or Adam. You can call me either. My background specifically comes from two sides of the pendulum here, which is that I've been interested in blockchain for a long time. I was using Bitcoin in 2013, but I didn't really dive in until Ethereum in 2017. I've done kind of a lot of options and stock trading, and so a natural fit to do a lot of kind of cryptocurrency trading. And so I held a lot of cryptocurrencies. I wouldn't say I'm the best trader, but I had made a few good picks. And when kind of 2020, 2021 rolled around, a lot of those things that I just held because I believed in the space and the technology, those were worth a lot. And so I wanted to dive deeper into the space. And I used a lot of those profits to roll into creating the Knights of the Ether project. And it was a natural fit for me because the other kind of side of the pendulum is my kind of creative pursuits. I've been a music producer, a musician for a long time. And that was my main kind of entrepreneurial pursuit for a long time. That was how I paid the bills for a while. And then I also graduated from UC Berkeley with an English degree. And I've been a lifelong gamer. That's been one of my main passions for most of my life. Almost went pro in Overwatch. I would say I was low tier, semi-pro. So I definitely always had a love for video games and blockchain and cryptocurrency. And so when I saw NFTs come along and then play to earn, things like Axie and Ether orgs, it was a really natural fit for me to want to make a splash in the space and kind of strike out on my own with my brother Dubber as my co-founder and create my own kind of play to earn project.
It's quite a diverse background. You got English, you're into blockchain, you're making music and producing. It's a lot of varied interests all coming together.
Definitely. And I mean, I think that's been kind of part of my journey was being I'm always very curious. I kind of refer to myself as an autodidact. I like to teach myself new things. And so I was scattered, but it felt like this NFT project that turned into a video game and a play to earn and this kind of Discord community where we're able to create lore and we're making our own music and content and video game. It felt like a really cool coalescing of all of these different pursuits that really just made sense to come together to one
Absolutely.
project.
Yeah, it really does come together, and I could see all of those components playing a part. And what's neat about it is it gives you an outlet for all of them too, right? Every day you have something of interest that's tickling all of those fancies, I imagine, which has got to just make for a rewarding day-to-day work experience. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely. I wake up every day, A, very passionate about what I'm doing, but B, very thankful that I do get to do what I am doing, and I'm able to have this kind of creative outlet in all of these kind of different areas. And it's funny, my fiance was asking me the other day, she said, "Do you ever think you would make a video game?" And I was like, no, I've played video games all my life, but it didn't really, I fell into it in the space through these other creative pursuits and seeing play to earn and being like, maybe this is something I can do. And I'm really glad that I did take that leap of faith. And I'll say, not to get on like a advice pedestal too much here, but following those kind of things that are a mix of your passions, but also where your like life is urging you into. I fell into creating Knights of the Ether in the video game, and it just makes sense. And so I'm glad I followed that passion and committed to
right
it.
on.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you too. And my whole life has been like these weird doors opening, and I just step in and take a peek and see where it takes you. And yeah, it's if you don't take those chances and those opportunities, you never know what kind of cool stuff you might miss out on. So I'm with you on that front. Let's talk a bit more specifically about how this Knights of the Ether came to be then. When did you sit down and say, let's design something? Like, what might a concept look like?
Yeah, for sure. It started with my brother and I getting into minting profile picture projects in kind of the summer of 2021. And the first few things we bought and minted were just total rugs. There was no direction. It was quick money grabs. Like we just felt like we could do better. And we also felt the space maybe deserved better because at that time it was like total mania where anything was selling out. It was more about just like the quick money, the quick flips. So we got inspired by the idea of, okay, what is an NFT like in its essence in the moment of what it was, which was these kind of randomly generated images coming together from all these different layers into one kind of cohesive image. And something just clicked one night when we were just chatting it over, which was that knights feel like a really good fit for this, like the way that the tech generates the image itself with their different armor pieces and their different weapons. And so they're like Lego
Right.
pieces that get put together and action figures in a digital sense. And so we felt like that was a really natural way to go about generating an image. And then, of course, I'm like a huge fantasy and sci-fi genre nerd, like Lord of the Rings, Dune, Gene Wolfe books. Like I've been reading fantasy and playing fantasy and sci-fi games all my life. And so it felt like that was a natural way to follow that door of passion once
Mhm.
again. And so it started out as a PFP project in September of 2021. And after 2 months of working on the art and formulating and starting the community and doing a little marketing and some outreach, things like EtherOrcs and Anonymize started popping on the scene. And there was this kind of gamified approach. There was this kind of on-chain RPG, play to earn side of things. And that really interested us. And we were like, oh, maybe this is what this could
Mhm.
be. And even though we didn't have experience in that, we took some of that money that we had made in crypto when we went out and we found a game development firm and said, hey, here's the idea that we have. Can we make something like this happen with this kind of Web3 tech under the hood? And that's been our guiding light as we've moved throughout the project is how can we experiment? How can we let our passion guide us? And how can we also make something and create something that we would want to be a part of coming from the kind of the user or the audience side of it? Because that's how we started
Got
as
it.
well.
Very cool. All right. So PFP project, generative, putting the pieces on. I could totally see that. As you start to think about this as a game, you guys have two branches here where you've got the Knights game, which was what Mydsummer Madness was just built around, and then you've got the Squires too. So where did you go from there? Did you go right towards the Squires, or what was the progression?
Yeah, so that was pretty important for us as we were noobs getting into the game development scene. We didn't really know what it would take to get a full
Mm-hmm.
game created at that point. But very quickly after diving fully into that and working with this game development firm, we realized, hey, like the ambition we have for the type of game we're creating, this doesn't happen in 6 months.
Right.
This happens in 18, 24 months. So we need to be able to actually ship a product and ship a game and ship something for the community in the meantime that's going to be meaningful and interesting and add to the lore and the ecosystem. And that's where Squires came in. And it happened to also align with the same time when we were working on our partnership with TreasureDAO, our amazing partners over at Arbitrum. By aligning with TreasureDAO and saying, hey, Arbitrum is a really cool place to be building. We can do these things really cheaply on chain. Let's also do some sort of like DeFi staking game, which was Squires. And so our kind of entrance into the TreasureDAO sphere on Arbitrum was airdropping all night holders one to one a Squire on Arbitrum. And so we bridged basically our whole community over to Arbitrum, started this new kind of DeFi staking game with Squires, and that was was our interim. Hey, it's going to be a long time until we have this full complete game, which is what we're really focused on building over a longer term. Let's work with our blockchain devs to make something a little more Web3 forward that we can iterate on during this time. And that happened to be
Got it.
Squires.
So that's why the Knights were on ETH until very recently, and the Squires were on Arbitrum. So you didn't know, you weren't targeting Arbitrum for the PFP project, obviously. That ended up on ETH. At what point did you catch wind of Arbitrum as a good place to go take this game? Did that come from your conversations with the dev shop, or where did that come from?
Yeah, so actually that was really cool. That came from an AMA we were holding right around mint time in our Discord. And I'm not sure how we got connected to them, but there were a lot of small brains in our community at that point in the lead up to the mint and at the mint. And we were talking about, hey, like, we're looking to create this game with on-chain transactions. We obviously can't do it on layer 1. We're thinking about Polygon. And that was triggering for the small brains. They were like, no, Arbitrum is the place to be. Like, they were such evangelists for Arbitrum and the Treasure community that it got our attention.
Gotcha.
And so immediately we started looking into that and was a natural fit. And obviously Arbitrum and Treasure has just gone crazy since then, and such a great community and ecosystem, totally expanded. Arbitrum is probably, if not the dominant layer 2, number 2. And we're really glad that we were ushered towards that chain from the small brain community.
That's
we're thankful
pretty cool.
for
I'm literally just editing the interview I did with Smash from Tales of Illyria this morning prior to us getting together. And he said the same thing. They were originally targeting Binance, and then they were trying to figure out, maybe we should check out these L2s. And he said the small brain community basically rated them. And once we saw that, there's a market there, so maybe we should check out Arbitrum and Treasure. Very similar stories. Go small brains, bringing 2 good games in.
Yes, it goes to show that if you can engender this, like evangelizing isn't like the best word, but it does get it across, of going out and being a proponent for the project or the chain that you're on. That's such a big part of Web3, is like having that community that kind of does the marketing for you, but in a sense it's more of like they're just there because they love what you're building and they want to be a part of it and they want to help see it grow. And so we saw that from the small brain community, and we're like, these are the type of people we want as a part of our community as well. And so it's just a total natural fit. And yeah, we're really no regrets.
Yeah, honestly, that's why I got hooked on Arbitrum early on too, because the rest of Web3 was melting down and everything was doom and gloom everywhere. And every time I was around any of the Arbitrum and small brain people, they were all having fun and eating and doing. It was a different vibe.
Just
vibing.
It was
a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
And I also remember pretty early on, I had forgotten about this, but I remember the Treasure DAO guys were on Bankless. And I remember David Hoffman on there talking about it too. He goes, I don't know much about these small brain guys, but they go hard. I could tell you that. This is the busiest I've seen a chat during a broadcast in a really long time, and they were all on there doing the same thing. So yeah, great vibe from the community. Very cool, and how that, like I said, lines up with what Smash was just talking about too. All right, so you airdrop your Squires. So that is and it's not necessarily an MVP, but it's almost like just something in between where you're trying to go. You're giving the community something to play with, something to get excited about. Airdrop the Squires. I think that's a really cool way to do anything, is when you're rewarding your existing holders. So just tell us more about what that experience was like. So once you launched that, how was it received? And just generally, how did the community respond to that airdrop and that game?
Yeah, that was really cool. So that was April 2022, last year. And it was a really interesting experience. It was a lot of onboarding new users to Arbitrum and going through that bridging of your assets and adding Arbitrum to your wallet. And the user experience for Web3, I think it's like crapped on a lot, but it's not that hard if people have like tutorials to follow or someone there to just guide them through. The problem is there's not that many. You can't always search on YouTube how to do this exact niche thing in Web3. Whereas in Web 2, you can search anything on YouTube and you're going to have a tutorial in 5 seconds. Like, you don't even need to get to YouTube. It just pops up on Google with that suggested video. Like, being able to be that resource for our community was really rewarding. And it was also like a fun process, even though it was like, it almost felt like a game. Like, we're all crossing the bridge to Arbitrum and exploring this new ecosystem, this new chain. And so I think everybody really loved that. And who doesn't love to get airdropped something for free? That's even cooler if it's like a character that you get to find out which class it is, and then you get to send it out on quests right away. Yeah, that was a really fun experience. And so we've iterated probably slower than we would have liked to on Squires over the past year because we've just had trouble with finding the right front end developer and just general like project management things that any sort of like startup is going to run into when you're bootstrapping and have a small budget. But we're really excited that now, after a year of it being live, and we've got 4 different quest destinations, 3 types of items, all this stuff, a lot of people have been acquiring things, which is still just very interesting and fun just to collect things and just to show up in quest
absolutely.
each day and see what kind of trinket did I get? What ring did I get? Even though there's not as deep of an economy and there's not like crafting yet, it's been fun over the past year just to level up your character and get these things that have a digital permanence. But we're excited to, within these next couple of weeks, actually drop the new shops, the Alchemist and the Jeweler, have people start upgrading things, start tying in this whole kind of inventory management system in Squires to Blightfell as well. So it's really going to start all coalescing here in the next few months.
You got some nice building blocks to work with, and that in of itself is exciting. But yeah, I can tell you just from, I've had a Squire forever, and I quest them every day. And I, like you said, I like going in and just see quick, it's 2 minutes, I'm in and I'm out. It's a quick dopamine hit. I see, did I get a ring or a potion or a trinket or whatever? Yeah, it's fun. It's one of those little moments of joy in the morning every day before I get into it. So how close is the current iteration of Mydsummer Madness and the actual deck builder game to what you all envisioned in the beginning? The thing that you were like, you put Squires into buy you time, if you will, with the community while you went and did this thing. Is it about what you guys had in mind, or what's that evolution been like?
Yeah, do you mean like specifically like the Blightfell game
Yeah,
itself?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely it's close to something we envisioned. But of course, a lot of this kind of like building in open in Web3 gaming is experimentation. And a lot of it is like learning from feedback you get as you go, both from the product that you're building and from the community that you're showing the product to as you're co-creating it with them, and being able to adapt as you go. I'm trying to think things like the 24-hour timer were inspired by the beacon. And so we didn't have that in mind when we first started building Blightfell a year and a half ago, but we saw, hey, that model really works for Web3 gaming. Let's do this kind of 24-hour timer where you get to complete one run per character every 24 hours. And so that was really cool. I think that added a lot of uniqueness to the gameplay. Doing handcrafted maps was not something we had in mind when we first started building the game, because a lot of deck building roguelike games, it's about that auto-generated map and having the kind of variability there and that algorithm. And while we do have auto-generated maps, it was really fun for my brother and I to go in and handcraft these maps. And we've been sitting and playing this game for so long and testing it to be able to then go in and create these kind of bespoke Blightfell experiences each day with themes like golf or Goblin Town. That was really creatively satisfying for us. And I think the community really responded to it as well. Yeah.
It allowed you to have kind of like a conversation with the community too about today's game, right?
Yes.
Like I remember when you put the golf ones out, you're like, sorry guys. And then the next day it was I think it was the Dubber Loves You Today map or something like that to make up for how bad golf was to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was, I thought that it added to the gameplay for sure in that back and forth. I like that.
I think it really speaks to the kind of like community building and the transparency that you get in Web3 gaming. It's like, we're making the game and we're in the Discord talking with the people playing the game every day. And we didn't make all of these maps beforehand and schedule them out. We made them day by day because we wanted to see how people are reacting to this map will inform how we map.
I like that. That's smart.
I think that's a really interesting conversation that you're probably not going to get in any Web2 game, maybe the most indie of indie games with small development teams, but that was what Web3 allowed us to do. And we really cherish that side of the kind of development process.
That's really cool. There are lots of upsides to that for sure. Things that would be obvious upsides. Was there any downside to that strategy? Did anything like any kind of friction or problems result from you doing it that in the open or that real time?
It does add a level of stress because there's no comfort zone. There's no curtain to hide behind. Like, you have to be accountable to your community. If you make mistakes, you have to own up to them. You have to be open-minded. You have to keep your ear to the ground and basically be aware of how your community is reacting to the decisions you're making. And it doesn't let you maybe have as much latitude of movement as you might have if you were building behind the scenes and were checking these things with your
Mm-hmm.
community over and over again. But that's a give and take that you sign up for when you build like transparently like this. And I think the pros outweigh the cons because I think a lot of games, this is talked about a lot in mobile gaming, where it's like kind of finding this product market fit where they'll ship very short versions, vertical slices of their games and do a lot of A/B testing and get it out in front of players very early in the development cycle to get that feedback. And that doesn't happen as much in PC gaming, but it does happen with
Mm-hmm.
us with Web3 gaming, and that we're able to get almost immediately, we add a new feature or we drop a new map or whatever it is that the community is playing, we get to check their feedback immediately and they get to find bug fixes for us
Right.
immediately. And it's something that we feel is very invaluable to the process. And it might be tougher for someone coming from a Web2 gaming background, but since this is all we know, we think it's invaluable and we're totally used to it at this point. And I
Mm-hmm.
like having the hard conversations with the community. I like being challenged on our kind of inherent biases on being so close to the product. It's good to get that viewpoint
Yep.
from them as well. As I think it's very helpful. Yeah.
Is there any particular instance of that stands out to you? Like any, I don't know, whether it be like a mistake you guys made or just something you did that wasn't received well by the community that surprised you? Like any kind of like tough lessons that jump to mind?
Yeah. I mean, there's been many over the course of the period. The most like recent one I can think of was when we were formulating initiation, which for the listeners is basically this process we're about to start where you can take your character and bind gear pieces to that character, and in the process burning the old character and minting a new one with those gear pieces attached. And when we announced that we were only going to let users use rare, epic, and legendary gear to initiate
Mm-hmm.
their villagers, and the immediate reaction we got in the general chat was, what if I don't have enough of that rare gear? I've been playing every day and rare gear is rare, and I don't have these
Right.
10 pieces I need to unlock my villager through initiation to trade it. That seems like a misdirection of what the initial intent of the blessed villagers meant was, which was that you will be able to trade it at some point. And in my mind I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, I need to control the supply of rare gear pieces because those are the ones that are the NFTs and they're tradable and it's part of the economy. But what I had skipped over was that these pieces might not be dropping enough for the average user for them to actually even initiate
Mm-hmm.
that character. And so that was one of those experiences of, hey, I'm really close to it. I was making a decision based off of a larger game economy thing, but
Yep.
the user immediately was like, hey, this isn't going to work for a lot of us. What about people who join Mydsummer Madness for the last 10 days and they only have one rare gear piece? Like they're left out to pasture. So that was an immediate, okay, hey, you guys saw something I did, and the next day we made a new announcement and say, hey, we're revising it that all rarities of gear pieces can be used for initiation. And so that was just one of those kind of examples.
That's a great example. And it just speaks to being willing to change on the fly, obviously, which is part of the whole reason why you're doing this in the first place. So obviously you're willing to take that feedback and change. Does that experience impact the way you make decisions going forward, do you think? Is there a distilled lesson like, hey, Mr. or Miss Founder out there, what should you do differently to account for this type of interaction?
Yeah, there's a few ways to go about it. I think the one that I found the most success with is having like a few community people or a few players, a few users that you can bounce things off of because they're going to see it just from kind of the user standpoint. So having like we have
Mm,
our dragons and they have like a channel. It's if you hold a certain amount of our NFTs, you're obviously very invested in the project and you care about the direction. So we'll bounce things off of them that we're planning and say just like to get a temperature check. And I think that's a great way to go about it, where it's like you're not like publicly announcing this full thing, but you also get to see what the audience or like a niche of the user's reaction
got it.
is. But at the same time, you need to be careful because we are dealing with people who are investing money into this, and you can't
Yep.
necessarily give inside information that's going to lead to them being able to buy things or front run the rest of the community. So you have to be careful on like how much
Right.
info you're
Yep.
sharing, but sharing enough to be able to get a good temperature check while not sharing too much to give privileged information to people before it's public. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. No, that's good. That's a good insight. And I think my interpretation of that for the listener would be just to think of all of the different roles that are taking part in your project, right? Because you're going to have people who are playing. You're going to have, sometimes you might have people that are paying attention just because they're investing in NFTs, not even playing the game. You're going to have people, obviously your team has the perspective of the business and the build and the long-term vision and the overall economy. So there's a couple of very different, unique perspectives that you're going to have there.
Yeah.
And just to make sure you're taking them all into consideration. I like that kind of, it's almost like a traditional focus group, if you will, to have some of these like key people are like, they're really into the game. That's our player group. Or if there was an investment angle, they're really into the investment angle. Let's get their perspective. But again, too, I could see the potential pitfall there that you mentioned of letting too much leak. So as you continue to develop all of this, you were working with a dev shop. You had you and your brother on the team. What else was going on there? Who else were you working with? What other types of resources did you need? Skill sets did you need access to, et cetera, along the way?
Yeah, totally. So we worked with a game development shop, and we also worked with two separate art studios and an animation studio. That was all contracted out work. We worked with kind of a smaller studio out Stanley for things like card art, card banners, icons, the maps, more of the kind of UI focused things, buttons, headers, all of that sort of stuff. And then we worked with a pretty large art shop called Volta, and they're quite big. They're pretty much like a AAA video game art studio. They've worked on Mass Effect and Halo 5 and Battlefield. And so they brought this really high level of structure and experience that they were definitely expensive. Like we had to foot the bill to work with them, but the quality that they produced and also the like experience of working with a shop that has so much like past experience and working with large studios was really insightful for us, as well as to know how to structure this sort of arrangement in the future. So we worked with those two art studios. We had our game development studio, and then the animation studio was like a sister studio of Volta. So we found them through Volta. Then we also have two core blockchain developers, one kind of back end, one front end. We have our moderators, our community managers, a partnership lead, people who kind of work for us, whether it's part-time or maybe they're a stay-at-home dad or they have a Web 2 job, but they work remotely so they can have Discord on the second monitor. We have a lot of cool people like that who like are just passionate about KOTE and found us through the community. And we saw, hey, they're answering all these questions great. They know what they're talking about. They keep a good vibe in the Discord. So let's bring them on as a moderator. It was really cool to hire people through the community because you know that they're like, their heart's in the right place. Like they were there because they liked the project and the team and the community itself. So it was a really natural outgrowth there.
That's a pattern I'm seeing with all of the different games, certainly on Treasure that I've talked to, is finding those gems in your community, the people that are really engaged and want to, they just care because they like the game, they care because they're invested, and they want to make it good. So they'll do good work for you. But all of this, it's a progression, right? Just framing this for the listener is, if you've got an idea, like you and your team started from not knowing what you were doing, walk through this a little bit by little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely brick by brick. Started with the game studio and then actually hired both of the art studios around the same time. The reason being is that Volta is more of like a concept and art and environment studio. And so UI and things like that is a little out of their purview. And also we wanted to budgetary concerns as well. As Volta is expensive, we can offset some of these costs with a smaller shop in Outstandly who still does great work, but their focus is more UI and they're going to charge less. That's great as well. So yeah, it started with the game development firm, which we brought on before Mint actually, because we really wanted to show, hey, like we're serious about this. We're spending our own money on working on this game even before we have Mint funds. And I think that was a big part of our success too, is we're willing to commit we're willing to put our money where our mouths were. Whereas a lot of projects at the time were like the opposite. And so started with the game dev firm, two art firms, hired a couple moderators. We worked with a blockchain development firm to get through the initial Mint. But then that is tough because they're working on a lot of other projects. They only have so much time for you. And so actually our core blockchain dev now, who's been with us ever since, I want to say April of last year, like right around the time Squires dropped, he was a community member and he found a bug in our code. And he came to us and said, hey, like I found this bug. Do you guys do bug bounties? Yada. And we were like, hey, like we don't really, but we'll definitely pay you some because this is like an exploit. Are you
Right.
interested in the job? And he was like, yeah, I'm trying to do Web3 full time. And so it's another example of that amazing
Oh,
like
perfect.
hiring from the community. And he's been amazing. We work closely together every day, and he's very committed to Knights of the Ether. So that was a great hire. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say for the listener, that's a lesson whether you want to be a founder or whether you want to work full time at Web3, right? If you are in a community and you bring value to the team without being asked, without for free, just because you want to, good things could happen too. So that's a
Right.
good call out
No,
there for the listener.
100%. I will reiterate that point that the people we hire from the community are not the people who show up and say, hey, can I have a job? It's the people who show up and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I want to do this for you, or hey, look at this thing I'm already doing for you. If we can see immediate
Yep.
value in like you being a part of the team, that's a no-brainer for us. We get a lot of people who open up tickets and say, hey, I'd love to be a moderator, and they just joined the Discord that day. It's like, that's probably not someone we're going to hire. If you're interested in being a part of a project in Web3, I would say get out there and grind, be a part of communities, find your people, your tribe, and then also find a way to add value in a way that maybe only you can, or that isn't being added to that project at that time already.
Yeah, right on. And for the listener, too, a couple episodes back, we talked with Max and Desolute from Realm, and both of them started on that team as moderators and then now are representing that project on podcasts.
Yeah.
So it could definitely build too from there. So keep that in mind. And I think just always in general, like in all your interactions, just try to bring value to the table and good things will happen. Good life advice. So as you look back on those times, going back a full year, didn't know what you're doing to where you are now, are there any like key insights or lessons or things you wished you'd known a year ago that you had to learn the hard way? That would be almost that like tidbit type advice that we could share with the listener.
That's a really good question. I would say maybe Web3 specific or like maybe startup specific might be that like startups are hard, Web3 is hard, Web3 startups are very hard. You're like flying against the really strong gust of wind that is like market sentiment. And especially as like a project that we've been building through almost entirely a bear market or a sideways crab market, whatever you'd like to call it. You need to find ways to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself passionate, to remind yourself why you got into building the project in the first place. And if you can't continually find ways to remind yourself of that, even during the days where the market's down 10% or when people in the Discord are all talking about price bad, like you might need to reassess, like, are you in it for the right reasons? Are you building something that you're passionate enough to continue to build for a long time and have that long-term vision around? So thankfully, I feel like I fell into Knights of the Ether and this Blightfell game that we're building in a way that it really was a coalescing, like I discussed earlier, of those passions I already had. So it's really easy for me to show up every day and give my all and work 14 hours on the project a day because I just love it. And I like being a part of building something with this community. But it's important to take those gut checks, and especially in Web3, I think if you aren't building from a place of like honesty and passion, it's very like palpable to a community and to users, and they're going to go find someone who is building for the long term and is building from a place of like really caring about what they're working on.
Yeah, I think that's so true and excellent advice for the listener is that, yeah, this stuff's going to be hard. And we're certainly not talking in this show ever about like the pump and dump type projects where somebody just makes a whole bunch of like marketing hype and sells something and mints out and makes a whole bunch of money and then sails off into the sunset. That's almost never going to happen. And when it does work, it's usually a sham anyways. But yeah, if you want to actually build something and have longevity, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, showing up on Twitter and seeing the latest pump and dump and a dev that did nothing but marketing hype like Ben and is making tens of millions of dollars, that's going to be tough as well, because you're going to be like, does the space I'm building in really reward like real building? And it's important to remind yourself that yes, it does on a longer time frame, and it's important to kind of see through the forest for the trees and keep building and working towards something that is meaningful instead of just the latest kind of trend on Twitter for 24 hours, because that's a flash in the pan.
Yeah, that is so good. And I've noticed that. I've noticed founders lightly lamenting that online. We've been at the grind here for 18 months, 16 months, 12, whatever it is. And yeah, here comes Ben.eth and Pauly, and you guys are just dumping bags of money on them. What the F, right?
Yeah.
Like I've seen that sentiment. It's a really good point. But yeah, but we're doing something meaningful here. So it's going to be a little bit harder. And yeah, awesome advice. Get ready for that. What's next for you guys? Where do you see this thing going? Where do you hope you can take this in the next 1, 2, 5 years? Tell me what your horizon is that you're thinking of right now and where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, totally. That's such a big question. And it's something that I think about a lot. Like I get really excited about the vision, about the long term, about what I think we can do. Like we're a very ambitious team and we want to accomplish a lot, but we also have to ground ourselves in the reality of, hey, what are we working on today? What are we working on this hour? What are we shipping next week? And so constantly like juggling that like short term versus long term goals is also another struggle for like startup founders. And so being able to like keep both of those things in balance is important. For us at Knights of the Ether at Merlin Labs, a game studio that's the kind of the umbrella company, we're really excited about Blightfell. I think first and foremost, I think we really proved the concept with Mydsummer Madness that there is this kind of like product market fit, that people like fun games and they like also ways of being able to earn small amounts of cryptocurrency or NFTs or whatever it is through that gameplay. But you have to lead with the fun. I think people came back and played our game for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day for 28 days straight because it was fun and enjoyable and there was the earning aspect to it. So we're constantly trying to figure out how can we best balance these two sides of the pull. I think personally I'd like to be more play forward than earn forward. I think that's just where my ethos is at, but I also understand that the audience in Web3 gaming that's around right now is maybe a little more earn focused than play focused. So we're hoping to continue to build with both of those things in mind, build out the demo version of Blightfell towards our alpha version of it early next year. We have a good amount of runway now because Mydsummer Madness was successful, because of our successful integration with Bridgeworld's Harvester. So we're well capitalized, we're energized to keep building out the core game that is Blightfell and hopefully ship an amazing full experience that's really innovative in the way that it integrates Web3, innovative in the way that it kind of foregrounds play, but also has this really unique aspect of earning to it. And on top of that, integrating the kind of the Squires, which is a more passive side of Web3 gaming. It's this DeFi staking, integrating that so that we have something for both active and passive players. And then a little bit tangentially, this is something that we just released actually in the past 2 days. And our partner, Sir Zero, and my brother Deber at the helm of this is Playform. And I won't get too deep into this because it's like what we're calling a side quest for Merlin Labs. It's something we're really interested in and we think is something that's more of a long-term play, but it's built around user-generated content, which is the idea that a player of a game can create gameplay experiences and share those with other players. And we're specifically working within the Unreal editor for Fortnite. Fortnite is obviously a huge game, 240 million monthly users, 15 million or 25 million daily active users, and half of those users play these creative user-made maps. And now Epic Games has just released this kind of commitment and 3-year roadmap that they're going to be giving 40% of all of their net revenue to users who create these maps and are able to attract people to play these maps a lot, which is a huge commitment. I think they're trying to go after this Roblox model where there's this big flywheel of all these user created games. It keeps people within their kind of environment, buying their skins, buying things to play these games. And so it's a really smart business move from Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite. And Epic Games is also known to being like Web3 open. Like they have Web3 games on their Epic Games launcher. So we see this as a space that's evolving pretty quickly in UGC and kind of Web3 integration. So we think 12 to 18 months from now, you'll be able to connect your MetaMask in Unreal Editor for Fortnite. You'll be able to make experiences that have Web3 connections within these Fortnite creative maps. And we want to create this community-led studio where our users upskill in Unreal Editor for Fortnite, build maps with us, maybe make profits in a revenue share model if we can all make maps that are good enough to attract enough players, while also meeting the players where they are, meeting gamers where they are on Fortnite. Like Web3 gaming is such a small bubble right now. If we can go out and make Blightfell IP maps or Knights of the Ether Capture the Flag. And these are fun experiences. And we run tournaments for our community to win Magic, and it attracts a larger player base. Like, that could bring a lot of people into KOTE or Treasure, Web3 gaming in general. So it's this kind of side quest, but we're really excited about the tech and combining blockchain and UGC. So we're interested to see how that goes as well, and to see if the community latches on and wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And I saw some of you guys put out some tweets with the Fortnite editor and mentioning this play form. And I was like, what the hell are they up to?
Yeah.
I didn't know what it meant, but that brings it all together. That's very cool. Yeah, no, I love that user-generated content in general. That's one of the things that excites me about the Web3 gaming space, is the ability for people to build things in either directly in, if the opportunity exists, but even just around the games, and almost expand the gaming economies around what you guys have in mind. And I just think there's a lot of opportunities for that. So I think this would encourage that. So I'm definitely excited to see where you can take it. Very cool. Where can people learn more about that?
Yeah, so the place to do that would be obviously in the Knights of the Ether Discord. We just made an announcement and released a kind of a long form Medium article that kind of goes through the whole thesis, like what the background is, why the team's thinking this is an interesting direction, and also what the kind of first stages are to go in that direction. So check out that Medium article in the discord.gg/KOTE. And then we also have a small side Discord called the Playform Hub that you can join through our KOTE Discord as well. The link's in that most recent announcement. Just a smaller place where we're bringing in a lot of independent Unreal Editor for Fortnite creators that we've linked up with on social media, to bring them in to work on maps together, and also a space for any KOTE community members who might want to work in Unreal Editor for Fortnite with us, a place to center that conversation that doesn't detract too much from our main quest, which is Knights of the Ether. So yeah, join the Playform Hub Discord if you're interested, and we'll be off to the races there.
I love how you refer to your business lines as quests too, like just really on brand and stick with the theme. That's very cool. I love it. So no, this has been awesome, Flook. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys are building. The game is a ton of fun. I'm definitely not an 8 to 12 hours a day guy. I'm more like 30 minutes a day if I can get to it. But I've had a lot of fun with it. I collected a bunch of gear myself. I don't think I got any legendaries yet, but I got some good epics and rares, so I did all right during the tournament. I had a lot of fun. And I'm actually gonna initiate one of my blessed villagers and give it to my kid and try to onboard some youngins into the space for you. So we're working on that.
The next generation. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, right on. All right, man. I'll share all of those links in the show notes down below. But yeah, everybody check the game out. Flook, really appreciate you coming and sharing the insights. Some really good stuff here for potential founders. And yeah, I'm rooting for you guys. I appreciate what you've done so far, and I can't wait to see where you go with this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Git. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing here with Ready Layer 2. I think more and more content like this that focuses on the building side and what goes into creating these projects is needed for the space to evolve in that right direction that we were talking about, right? That rewards builders and real products and real kind of things instead of the crypto trend of the day. So I appreciate what you're doing here with Ready Layer 2, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we need people who are going to take this technology and use it to change the world in the future. And that's really what I see happening here. The work that's happening, that you're doing, that's happening within Treasure DAO, like starting to work out interoperability and things like that between games. That's really why I'm here. That's going to be the stuff that changes the way the world works. And while it's being built, we're figuring all this out on top of games and whatnot right now. It's gonna impact everything, I think, in the long run. So yeah, that's why we want to support the builders, and we want to make sure that there's people just turning this all into something meaningful. Thanks again for the time to you, the listener. We'll see you next time on Ready Layer 2. Thank you for listening to Ready Layer 2. If you're an Arbitrum builder with a story to share, then hit me up on Twitter at GitSmol, GITSMOL. Learn more at gitsmol.com.